Um, and the reason why we are daring to go down this road is because we have a very experienced teacher today sharing her insight into the entire context of teacher listening time. I'd like you to make welcome my very senior colleague from Trinity College London, who is also an academic consultant, Kiran Shetty. She's hiding behind that shade of green. There she is. Just to give you a little background, in English, we also refer to a song known as the alphabet soup. Kiran's qualifications read pretty much like that. In addition to an ECC Ed and a B.Ed, she also has a master's in clinical psychology, is currently working on another master's in language teaching, and beginning the initial works of a PhD. So pretty much safe to say that you're in very good hands for the next 1 hour on the subject. Kiran is also in between, in addition to breaking into song, she could break into dance, and that's also because she's a accomplished folk dance artist and has represented India in 23 countries. So as you can see, we've got entertainment also planned for you through this webinar. And without a further ado, I'd like to introduce you and make welcome Kiran Shetty. Kiran, the forum is all yours. We have a budding group of teachers. As you've seen, you've been here in the past as well, if I'm not mistaken, on the 24th of July. So most eager learners, very generous with their compliments, with their feedback, and always hungry to know more. On that note, I'm going to say bye to you, teachers. I will see you at the end of Kiran's session when we wrap things up. Till then, enjoy.
Thank you, Dale, with that very lavish praise. And good evening, my dear teachers. And let's deep dive right into the topic. And as our topic for today says, TLT as in teacher listening time. So let's look at our overview. And in our overview, we are going to be doing student talk time. I think that's a very familiar kind of a term for all of us. Teacher talk time. Don't we do a lot of that? Then there is teacher listening time, which we're going to talk about today. Then we're looking at reaction time, lesson planning, error correction, and accommodative lesson planning, and of course, the feedback. Let's look at what STT, TTT, and TLT now is all about. So when you look at the student, when we are fresh-eyed and bushy-tailed into after our teacher training courses and into our classrooms, we've been repeatedly told by our mentors and our tutors and our observers to watch how much of talk time we are doing so that we give opportunity to our learners to participate in the activities. Unfortunately, as we start becoming a little bit jaded, we assume that we need to explain, or sometimes even as a new teacher, we feel it's our responsibility to ensure that our students really understand the topic. They understand the ring view too. So we over and over explain the same thing, not factoring in it that it is very vital for our students to watch the ratio, and for all the teachers too. So the ratio between the teacher talk time and the student talk time. Any time that ratio is less than 50%, then we are actually eating into what is supposed to be a reaction time by our students to what we are teaching. Because we are also, remember, our responsibility is not just to teach the language, it's to ensure that they're exposed to the language, and the language that just does. It doesn't mean reading, writing alone. It means the way they hear the sound, the way they listen to the language, because that's exactly how then they will express the language. And let's also look at why our role and why our teacher listening time plays such a key role, especially in our ELT classrooms. What I'm going to speak about is very important for any language and any subject, but more so for English language. Now let's look at a lesson plan example that all of you are going to, I'm sure it's there in the chat, the links are being shared. and they will do so in a minute. You will receive a lesson plan, and if in case if you're watching this through your phone and if the font is very little or small, you need to just enlarge it. If not, you can always refer to this after the webinar, and you can then cross check. So while you are looking at this example, this is our typical lesson plan, how we go about our lesson plans. You see all the stages in place. We do our introduction and we do our warm-up activity, and then we move on to what we are, what we present the topic. We also talk about introduction, what you're going to teach. And here, because I'm going to talk about adult learners, we are going to talk about pronunciation, and we are talking about the way we are going to use catenation. That is when we are blending the consonant and the vowel sound together. And when we are speaking at a faster pace, it comes out to as one word. So that's what we are targeting. Then we're going to talk about the lexis. We are going to talk about the communicative activity, and then of course the reflection, where we are going to talk about the feedback. If this is how we go about, this is the generic way we would generally look at our lesson planning. But what happens if you want to factor in more time for your students to participate, more time for them to do something productive and respond to what you're doing? Here, if you look at your lesson plan, the first part of it, you will have a lot of work done by the teacher. So the focus will be teacher. And when we are looking at a language classroom, the focus needs to be the learner, the person who is supposed to learn the language, or the subject whom you're teaching the language. So as you move to the second part of your lesson plan, and this lesson is planned for the A1 level adult learners, the topic that we've chosen is family. And because they are adult learners, we can extend beyond our regular. I'm sure my colleague, Ms. Joyce, has already looked at JSC Grade 2. And if you've not, please check that webinar link where you can do that activity with young learners. But here I'm going to talk about how you can extend this to adult learners. And what adult learners, you can talk about a get-together. We can bring in phrasal verbs such as meeting up, joining in, visiting. So what happens is when we are going to bring in these elements, there's lots more to do with adult learners. Remember, they have already a certain amount of life experience, and when they are coming to our classes, they are coming connect to that experience, and they can then use the same to speak. When I found this, Jessie grade 5 and 4 levels, so that they could talk better with their grandchildren who were abroad. And I've learned that they have lots to bring to the table, to ideas and their experiences, and then they can connect to the target language and lexis very well. So when you're looking at the second part of your lesson plan, and you're looking at what's again in your chat boxes, which Dale has shared with you, look at that, and then please ponder over the questions we are referring to. What can we do as a teacher now to ensure that we can rework our lesson plan so they get more to participate in that lesson rather than us? So please look at it during our warmer here. What have we done? We have opened up the topic so that the students can, or the learners here, can participate. There is sharing happening. You can also look at good example of emergent language which is coming out of that talk which is going on amongst the learner, and note it down carefully for further reference. We can also write on board the new words which are coming out of that conversation. So this kind of sets the tone of what's going to happen at every stage, and you can refer into your lesson plan. We have something more for the learner. Remember, at all points of time, whether we are doing it any which way, you're listening into the students' conversations subtly. Now, if you're going to wonder about how am I going to do this when I'm online, it can be easily achieved as we are going through their breakout rooms, or when we are quiet. Sometimes, like how we, for example, we can just switch off our video and they can be given, say, 3 to 4 minutes of talk time, and we note down the way the conversation is leading. So coming back to then, the other areas, please do consider these two questions that you can see on screen, that how can you make each stage more communicative, and what can you as a teacher listen for during every stage of the lesson plan. Of course, I would love to hear from all of you if you have been doing this already, and you may please share your ideas in the chat box. But kindly look at what we are doing with the lesson that you are referring to. At every stage, if you scroll down the chat box and you can see your lesson, we are giving more scope for the learner to expound on this current topic. Now, let's look at a few tips as teachers that we can practice to ensure that our learners are getting more time to talk so that we can be better listener. First couple of things is, you might wonder, but when the student is talking, I am listening. No, but my observation as a teacher trainer has been that a lot of things in the English classroom works on assumption, and you would like to look at that. So here are the tips. And if you're already doing it, a big hooray. So carefully listen to what your students are trying to tell you. I know it's going to be difficult if you're having a large classroom, but even when they are putting their hand up and they're trying to tell you something, whether they're adult or whether young children or whatever the age group is, when they're trying to tell you something, it's very important to listen to them totally with their entire attention as to what they're trying to say. Very important here is to stop thinking about our reaction to them. Most of the time, as we get senior in our craft, we kind of assume that that's how they are going to go. So we kind of say, okay, thank you, now the next. So that kind of demotivates the speaker. So please, let's look at them and not us. Here, it's very vital to also remember to look at paralinguistic language and non-linguistic language. And when I'm talking about paralinguistic language, I'm talking about the intonation and volume. Many a times when we are nervous, the way our voice changes the pitch. If we are unsure, the way our intonations go and up and down. And again, the L1 influence, what creeps sometime into our speaking. So these things are a dead giveaway for a teacher to understand what the learner is trying to say so that she can develop better listening skill. Do not also neglect the non-linguistic communication. In fact, listen to what they're not saying. So if they're not communicating, the way they're using little gestures, the way their facial features they are used, their body language, their shuffling, their ha, all that. Here, I would like to, talk about also how the intonation works. So remember, our students, our young learners, or whether they're old or any learners, also have a large part of their L1 to, and intonation and inflection in the language plays a key role here. There's a word in Hindi, acha. The word acha in Hindi means good, and I'm sure many of you know this word. And but it could also mean a lot of things in the way I say it. So if I'm saying acha, and it could be a bye, and if I'm saying acha, it could be, are you sure? And you say acha. So you're saying, oh, all right. So that's how language changes with intonation and inflection. And with English, it's the same. So remember that the learners may not know this. So you need to watch for those signs. Also show that you're listening by nodding, smiling, paying attention, asking them questions and clarifications when they want something. And we can also be involved and boost their confidence when they are talking about something by, encouraging them to say something. Ask questions, ask for clarification. They enjoy that their teacher's attention is totally what she's talking, and they are on what they are talking about. Most importantly, be comfortable with some silences. Wait for your learner who's still trying to find the right vocabulary to talk to you. Fill in when you need to, but if they're taking some time, allow them that time. This is easier said than done when we have just 40 minutes to deal with, whether it's a Zoom classroom or our regular classes. But I think it comes from practice, and most importantly, it comes with intent. You must let them help themselves express themselves in whichever way they are feeling comfortable. These little things set in the beginning of the year, you will find really play out very well by the time the year ends, and they are better at expressing themselves. Sometimes it's good to summarize what they have said or what you have said, so it helps both the way. It's very vital to refer to some things that they have said in their conversations to you, whether with about the lesson or informally, and they enjoy that the teacher is listening attentively to what they have said, and that boosts the confidence, and we know confidence changes everything in communication. Then consider how you are going to come in correcting and when you're going to correct them. Are you correcting them immediately? But is that going to hamper the flow and the fluency because we are focused on accuracy? So we can consider those things too. So why we are looking at all these points, we might also be look at how our lesson plannings are now to be planned in future, or if you're already doing so, again, a big hooray, with reaction time factored into the lesson plan. Now, what is the word reaction time? If you know about this, super. If not, let me just explain. So the reaction time is that time when the teacher says something and you've factored in the response. So if you're going to plan your lesson plan for 40 minutes and it's chock-a-block with all the activities that you can think of, and there is hardly any time that you've factored in for a student response or for what they want to ask you a question, or what happens after you've introduced the activity and how are they participating, what are the questions that can come up from them. If we have not factored them, then our lesson planning timing can go somewhere. So less is more, as always. And I'm sure in the last webinar, I think when Dale was also referring to it when it comes to certain things, in lesson planning, it's definitely, see, you are the master of all that you survey within the classroom. Yes, the syllabus is there, but how much to do and how do you break these units is already there, planned for us many a times in our syllabus, in our curriculum overviews. But if not, decide what you're going to be targeting. Is it going to be lexis? Is it going to be vocabulary? Is it going to be a particular aspect of phonology? That's what you need to decide. So what is reaction time? Is the response time that a student will give to your teacher's activity, question, interaction. So do plan your lesson plans purely with, not solely with you as a center focus, but the learner's reaction as a center focus. Less is more. Be prepared for distractions. Now, all of us who have been teachers know this. It could be the public address system and our football team winning, or it could be a pigeon, or it could be somebody puking, it could be anything, or it could be somebody cracking a joke, the class clown taking over, anything. Be prepared for your distractions, factor them into your lesson planning. And distractions, for me, are my teachable moments. If I am distracted by something, I use that not to give that thing an importance. Acknowledge the distraction, teachers, please. Do acknowledge the distractions. So if the football team has won a championship, it's super. So we all give 3 cheers and then back to your lesson plan. If there's a pigeon, wonderful. So it can. And always our lesson plan is not the end of everything. It could be the starting point for many conversations, new lexis, new vocabulary. Always encourage robust participation in the form of questions. Please, if you want to put it up somewhere, I have put up in every classroom when I was teaching in school, in colleges, please put it up that no question is silly, but then I say it's silly to not ask a question. That motivation, that okay from you works wonders. They would love to then take it further, because there are going to be always majority of them who are very hesitant to even put up their hand and ask you a question. So let's not focus on the top 5. Let's focus on the rest of the class and ensure that everybody participates. And that's how we kind of, give everybody a chance to speak up. Let's move on about error correction. Now, error correction is damned if we do and damned if we don't kind of thing, but it's very vital. So let's now wonder, or rather, look at how we are going to do it. When do you think is the best time to do it and why? Well, frankly, there is no such thumb rule. You need to go by your gut feeling, gut instincts, and it's just something that comes to us with practice. But one thing before we move further is no. And this is something that comes from like a teacher who's taught many years and is also now watching lessons. Sarcasm doesn't have any place in a classroom, whether it's coming from the students or the learners or from the teacher. We are, like Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. And I say it otherwise. I say with great responsibility comes with great power. Let's talk about how to plan a lesson plan with correction slots inserted. So we've already looked at lesson planning with reaction time. We are now looking at lesson plans with the correction slots. Please repeat the communication scenario they made the error in. I'll give you an example here. Let's say you're teaching them past present continuous tense and you found that they made a lot of errors and you've given them a correction. But if you do not follow it up with giving another activity or ask them to redo the activity and then give them a feedback, it's very difficult if we move on with another activity. So it's very vital whether we are doing our essays or whether we are doing our creative writing, literature, maths, anything. When a learner makes the error in that particular scenario, please repeat the scenario or the lesson or the activity where the learner gets an opportunity to correct his errors and revisit, and you can then give a feedback on the new lesson which is revised now. Again, please encourage error correction, whether it is teacher corrected, peer corrections. We do that in the classrooms, isn't it? We ask them to do peer sharing. We ask them to do peer correction. We ask them to do self-correction. I've always found it very important to write detailed comments when I give my feedback, even when they're not. Sometimes it's not possible because of the time constraints, but what works for me is at least 3 essays or write-ups or projects from their side. I reviewed in a detailed manner, especially if they are going to be counted for their final exam marks. That way they get a scope to look at their work and correct it. So that's very vital. We'll be talking about this during our feedback in a few minutes, where I'm talking about our feedback part of the webinar. But please remember, teachers, that it's very vital that we all are a collective unit when it comes to ensuring we are not there to pick faults with the learners. We are there to help them absorb, learn, and use the language. For that, we need to tell them how to rectify their errors so that they can move forward without their confidence being corrected. So that confidence part of it is very key. Please also remember that when you focus on them getting right rather than not on what. So focus on how they're getting it right. So when you're, if you've seen a person who's auto-corrected while he's speaking, or when he's made a correction that you noticed in his last assignment, flag it and praise them for it. That works wonders. So let's look at a little bit more about accommodative lesson planning, which has reaction time, which has listening time factored in, error correction factored in. And this is how it can look like. As we've said, so I repeat that yes, less is more. Please do not put so many correction activities in your lesson that it is very difficult for the learner to absorb so many things. So you plan your input so that you can listen and give plenty of feedback to the learner. Also plan backwards whether everything is whether you've covered all the tasks that they're supposed to cover, etc. Plan for differentiation, and here I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about this, especially in our classrooms, because Indian classrooms, especially are in urban metros, etc., have fairly large number of students in a class. So we are lucky if we are teaching less than 50, in fact. Okay. Sometimes in the state schools, we have a large number and we can't do anything about it. We need to understand that we have different kinds of learners with different kinds of needs, different types of learners who learn differently. Is our lesson plan complete with enough visual, auditory, kinesthetic activities? Can we give something as a home assignment? Can that, so that the lesson is reiterated? Have we factored in the special needs students of our class? What about them? And very cleverly, arranging our fast learners with our special needs learners so that they have an additional support apart from us, so that we can encourage learning. Are we looking at everyone's needs when we are positioned in our classroom? These are very vital things, not only during our lesson planning, but how we place our class when we are teaching. Secondly, moving on, make achievable outcomes that you can discuss with your learners. So what have they achieved? And when you, let's say you're targeting a particular Lexis for a particular day, a pronunciation activity, discuss with the learners what you have achieved during that time. Again, plan for reaction time, plan for error correction time, plan for the unplanned all the time, like unsteady internet right now in our scenario, the heavy rains, anything could go wrong. But please don't miss a beat and come back and start from where you have left, whether it is offline or online, whether you're in person or not. It all depends on how we connect, and be very, very creative. You can, unlike a webinar where I'm addressing you and all of you are everywhere, in our classroom, we go back to our students probably every day, at least 4 days a week or 5 days a week. Factor in that if we have not completed something today, then we can do that next time. What have we not done justice to? Can we revisit that topic? Can we look at it again? And how will it help us? And that could be also very vital. Again, focus all the time on what some of our students don't say. They don't speak up. So that doesn't mean they don't have anything to say. They have lots to say. But I always like to loiter, sometimes time permitting, if I don't have a next class in my classroom. When I was teaching full time, I would have my lunch with my students in the classroom after, and not visit the staff room, not because I didn't enjoy the company of my teachers, because I especially did this in the beginning of the year, because it established kind of a rapport between me and the students, and that kind of built the confidence thread and the communicative or a communication thread that kind of they can then feel bold enough to come and talk to me and establish a conversation. That helped me when they were in the class with me and we're trying to learn something. They were suddenly, I'm not someone who just visits them, and they can come up to me and ask questions, and that is what I keep on repeating with every teacher that I interact with now. Let's come about to the feedback part of it, one of the most vital thing of our lessons and learning. How do we know how much our learners have learned? Because it's when they receive a feedback from us, and especially when we receive a feedback. Now, many a times, this quote is very beautiful that I've picked up. Like, so when you receive comments about your work, so that you know how well your studies are going, and so you know how badly your studies are going. Now, it's this quote actually is the most communicative quote. And I'm not talking about the grammar component and how it's phrased and etc. No, but this is what is summed. The feedback is vital because you need to know how you are doing, whether you're doing well or you're doing not so well. It's very vital for us to get the feedback. Imagine if I submit something for correction and I never see it never sees the light of the day. I've not corrected. It's there in my cupboard. I don't have the time. My students wait for the feedback. And they want to know, because they want to know not just because of the marks. Over here we can again wean them away from just knowing how many marks they've got, but what exactly do you expect from them, and whether they have taken it forward, what were your expectations, and did they meet up those. So this is the reason why I think our learners need the feedback. And in fact, as teachers, we need the feedback. One is to signal an error that has been made in the hope that this error will be made less the next time. So if you're given a correction, you expect that the learners understood. But for that, please establish that that is your expectation before you say or give a feedback. Then to support a development in general, because that's what is our aim, so they didn't develop in the subject knowledge or in language. To praise an effective communication and language use, please, this works super. More praise, and not false praise, but really well placed praise, is a great motivator. Also, sometimes there's a communication breakdown, either because the learner is not interested or something. So your feedback can bring it back to the track and you can build up with it. Most importantly, your learners, your parents, and your institution expects you to give feedback, whether it is in your corrections going on timely, notebooks being corrected, whether your reports being ready. I'm not talking about only the official feedback, teachers. Please factor in feedback time at the end of your lesson so that you know what more can you do for your students and learners. Let's talk about how we prepare so please establish certain things right in the beginning of the year, because if you need to expect, you need them to be on the same page with you. You need them to also understand why you need to give them feedback. So first and foremost, are they confident to have the opportunity to ask the questions that we all talked about? So first things first, we need to build in that confidence. Do they understand the criteria for which, and all the criteria in advance? Have you told them, okay, if you do this, you get an A, and if you do this, you're getting a B? So I would love to share also as a follow-up how Trinity in the language has a criteria map for our exam. So we know in advance what's an A, what's an B, what's a C, and what's a D. So the learners and the teachers know in advance, and that's how they work through the criteria to the goals that they are trying to teach. Do they understand why they're getting the feedback? Do they know what they're going to do with the feedback? We have to discuss these things also at the beginning of the year and establish some ground rules. Because it's very vital. Okay, I'm getting feedback from my teacher. What am I going to do with that? Is it, yes, I understood that now, but Am I going to use it again? Are we going to go back to the first term topic? Or that topic is done in the first term, it doesn't apply? No, it's not like that. Unfortunately, in the language, it's a big link. It's a big link of chain. And I think the more you strengthen these links in the younger classes and as they grow older, it kind of helps. And you're giving a recap. Again, a tip over here is that I spend a lot of time with the recap time in the beginning of the year, what they've learned previously, so that it helps me to like brush up the memory and also know whether they're really with me. Most importantly, there are some times when we need to give critical feedback. And at that point of time, it's very vital that we prepare them for that. So please do understand that it's very vital that your learners are prepped for your critical feedback. So kindly ease them into it at the end of the year and slowly and steadily build it up. This is how, otherwise, when we give a very critical feedback right in the beginning without establishing the ground for it, some of them may not take it kindly, or they might feel demotivated and not participate in our activities or in our lessons. And that's not what we want. We want all our learners to grow together. Uh, because of the online thing, things are kind of easy. I'm using Flipgrid. I don't know about y'all, but you can do anything that suits you. These are the tools and the devices where you can use. And Dale at that wonderful session last time where we were to last Friday, where we used a lot of tools. So these are some of the tools. And something which I've learned. The learners, they are spot on. They know this better than us. They kind of get it very quickly. So I like to toy around with Flipgrid, especially giving feedbacks, because it's personalized. Suddenly they're seeing us and we are together, and they kind of fun thing. If you can't do Flipgrid, please, a WhatsApp video works fine. I do it many a times. I just tell them, look at your line number, this, underline this, highlight. Also, Google Docs are wonderful to do error correction, especially with written tasks. But do talk to them through Flipgrid video feedbacks. Ask them to share some lessons this way. You will enjoy the class dynamics change, and they really want to do something more next time. Moving on, these are some other things. This especially works with writing. The Google Doc, where you leave in detailed comments and where the learners look at it and they come back. One another crucial thing coming up, reminders. Yes, our learners are going to be learners. They are not going to turn in the assignment when we want them to turn in the assignment. So you need to send them gentle reminders and set up the criteria in advance. Sort out the common issues before you come to individual issues. So a general thing, like just something that you have before our webinar goes, what's the game? House rules. Set up your house rules. Please delay error correction 3/4 way through the class, especially with their final submissions, when they're giving you them that project which kind of makes the mark for the year, or whether it is our crucial term papers, etc. That's how they will kind of look at their work and come back, because you need to draw their attention to what they are doing, and not just writing, okay, not right, right, not right. That's not going to help them. So while speaking, also give them a rehearsal of the task and give them feedback when they prepare for their activities. For speech, remember when we had our classrooms, and that was the time, and we could sit next to them and sit down and give them the feedback, or look into over their shoulders and say, okay, good, can you do this way? This you can do it now through the messaging apps that I mentioned, so that if it's something only individual, talk to them personally. I leave voice notes for my students many a times, so that they come back and they know this is where I need to do my task better. And if it's a group thing, then you can have it whichever broadcast method you have that works for you. And this is in conclusion. So this is what we covered today, teachers. In all this, it's an instinct. Go with your guts, and you will always remember what is the right or what's not so right, and what's working and what's not working, because you are there in your classroom, in your situation, and you would know that exactly what's working and not working. But please do look at these factors when you're planning lesson plan, and so vital to listen to our learners.